Welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Axion.
I'm Sid.
We're continuing through Final Fantasy V and our discussion of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince.
Seems like you have to have a really careful rein on magic in this game, don't you?
Yeah. If only because
otherwise...
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say because otherwise you just end up, running out of power and then you're kind of done. I mean, I'm getting pretty low as it is.
Yeah, I was thinking more in the sense of, like, if just anybody can take the wizard job class, or the black mage in this case, you'd have a bunch of psychopaths running around with almost no less power compared to your average, say, like, cook or blacksmith.
I mean, that's happening too.
Yeah, it's a good thing we don't have that going on in Harry Potter, right?
Cough, cough.
But yes, today's topic is, well, the interplay between the Muggle and Wizarding worlds. Both on an individual level and on a political level, because, well, we know that it's been established that there is a Ministry of Magic, and we learn in this book, officially, that the Minister of Magic is, in fact, in communication with the Prime Minister, albeit rarely.
So, in any story that revolves around the, necessity of looking at differences and problems of cooperation between different parts of society, politics is inevitably going to become involved. And as much as a lot of people like to say things like that they're not interested in politics or that they don't want to do anything involving politics, politics is an inevitable and unavoidable part of living in civilization.
Especially when some people make it part of their personal politics to deny the right of basic existence to large swathes of people. As is very relevant in Half-Blood Prince because, the Death Eaters and anyone with Muggle blood. And, well, so, on an individual level, we know that wizard hate crimes against Muggles are on the rise, and Muggles are powerless to explain what's going on. As noted, a bridge collapsed, random murders, people going insane due to backfiring curses. But, again, because the Ministry of Magic's job is to conceal the existence of magic from the wider world, well, this effectively means you have an invisible enemy able to do whatever it wants because clearly the authorities are not able to stop them. So, this is where government comes into play and the role of the government. So, not to get inherently political as we discuss politics of a fictional book, but what is the role of government? To many people, it is to care for its citizens. So this involves upholding the rule of law to make sure that some semblance of order and justice is kept, so people continue to have faith in the system. It's not just we do it because we've always done it, it's we do this because there is a clear and tangible benefit to giving up some sort of whatever, it's a social contract. So, but as the Death Eaters have infiltrated the Ministry in some small capacity, not that small, it's become clear that the current ministry is unable to keep the situation at bay, which has led to multiple conversations between Fudge and the unnamed UK Prime Minister. So, the Prime Minister could not honestly return the Fudge's compliment because Fudge said it's good to see you again. He was not remotely pleased to see Fudge, whose occasional appearances, apart from being downright alarming in themselves because he just shows up out of the fireplace, generally meant that he was about to hear some very bad news. Furthermore, Fudge was looking distinctly careworn, thinner, balder, grayer, and his face had a crumpled look. The Prime Minister had seen that kind of look in politicians before, and it never boded well. So, yeah. Fudge says, I've been having the same week you have, Prime Minister. The Brockdale Bridge, the Bones and Vance murders, not to mention the rucks in the West Country. Some of your people were involved in those things, were they? Of course they were. Surely you realize what's going on. It was precisely this sort of behavior that made him dislike Fudge's visit so much. He did not appreciate being made to feel like an ignorant schoolboy, but of course it had been like this from his very first meeting with Fudge on his very first evening as Prime Minister. So, the wizarding world coexists, but separately. They follow their own rules and they police their own because Muggles are just honestly not capable of countering the magic. But because there's such secrecy, they don't explain anything to Muggles who are actively in danger from this secrecy, and leave them to clean up the mess by themselves largely, and to take the blame when things go wrong. The Prime Minister is actually under a lot of fire for being unable to handle these unexplained phenomena.
Which is kind of difficult when you have no idea what's going on, because your counterpart in the magical governmental authorities doesn't tell you anything.
And what they do tell you is stuff that you can't repeat without heavy editing because, well, part of my job is to keep the dragon population under control. Most people don't believe in dragons. Why hasn't a former Prime Minister warned me? My dear Prime Minister, are you ever going to tell anybody? We know no one will believe you. So, yeah. Talks about a man called Sirius Black, something that sounded like Hogwarts, and a boy called Harry Potter, none of which made the remotest sense to the Prime Minister. And tells him to, put out the alert for an escaped serial killer. And again, about the Triwizard Tournament, so we've seen that there's been quite a lot of interaction between Fudge and the Minister over the past few years, culminating now in when, well, he's admitting, yeah, no, there wasn't really a hurricane, the bridge didn't wear out, those murders were not the work of Muggles, and your aide who's lost his mind is having a bad reaction to an Imperius curse. So, yeah, I have been sacked. I've been replaced because the magical community no longer has faith in my ability to contain the situation. He conveniently, leaves out the part where he completely downplayed the threat for over a year, giving plenty of time for support to build right under his nose. But, yeah. You can't seriously think I'm still minister after this. And, yeah. Enter Rufus Scrimger, who seems, at least physically, more imposing than Fudge, and much more inclined to actually take action. But, as we note later on, when he actually interacts with Harry, some of the people still in places of power are not really fit for those positions, such as Dolores Umbridge, and mentioning her immediately gets him off of Harry's good side. So he cannot use Harry as, the media puppet he would like to, build support in the ministry. So, yeah. There's a lot there.
Just a dad. So we have... Please don't make me fight this thing. we have this situation where we have an authority figure expected to deal with the ongoing problems of, society, and he doesn't have the resources, he doesn't have the power, and he doesn't have the information he needs to actually do it. And the people who do have all of that information, all of that power, all of that ability, won't tell him what he needs to know, won't communicate,
or worse, he does tell him, and the resounding result is essentially, yeah, there's absolutely nothing you can do, just try to stay safe. How helpful would that be?
Honestly, it's kind of the opposite of helpful, because it gives the impression that there's something to be done, and then nothing happens. Or he's not actually able to do anything.
Yep. So, more details from the conversation between the Minister and Fudge. He who must not be named has now been joined by those of his followers who broke out of Azkaban in January. So after he'd mentioned a mass breakout from the wizard prison, it's okay, it's all under control. Oh no, it wasn't actually Sirius Black. He's actually innocent. Long story, don't have time to get into it right now. Oh yeah, the guy who led a bunch of mass murders 17 years ago? Yeah, no, he's back. Since they had moved into the open, they had been wreaking havoc. The Rockdale Bridge, he did it, Prime Minister. He threatened a mass Muggle killing unless I stood aside for him. Good grief, so it's your fault those people were killed, and I'm having to answer questions about rusted rigging and corroded expansion joints, and I don't know what else. My fault? Are you saying you would have caved into blackmail like that? So, there's a lot to question there. On the one hand, would stepping aside for Voldemort to take power, but as he wanted, have actually prevented that? Voldemort has never come across in the other books as the type of person to keep his word, so it's likely that Fudge would have stepped aside and he would have killed them anyway.
Or worse, he would have not done the killing in that instance, but he would have now had power and been able to do a lot worse on a much larger scale.
Yep. There's also potentially the argument that because it wasn't wizarding lives at stake, Fudge didn't take the bluff very seriously. So he called him, and it wasn't a bluff. Because that's always a consideration when you're dealing with a clear caste divide, and Muggles, in the eyes of many wizards, are lesser, if they're even considered worth their while. Some purebloods would just outright not consider them people, I think. So, Fudge has been noted as spending time around the Malfoys and other influential, wealthy pureblood families. It's not impossible to believe that he's been somewhat corroded by this ideology that since he's the Minister of Magic, Muggles do not matter as much. And therefore, the threat of a mass Muggle killing was just like, oh yeah, whatever, what are you gonna do? Oh, you're gonna do that? Oh crap, well. So, on top of the Muggle authorities having no context, nor information, nor resources to actually cope with anything, Fudge has mentioned that the Ministry is struggling to keep up with this. Again, partly because Fudge slept on this issue with a full year's advance warning. As with many crises, time is of the essence, and the longer there is a delay before a coherent response, the more worse it's going to get. And this goes for epidemics. We actually saw this play out a lot of places around the world with a certain Backstreet Boys reunion tour, where the countries that acted quickly and decisively had very little issue with it, and the countries that decided they didn't want to be inconvenienced by adhering to safety guidelines are still dealing with it.
Not to mention how politicized the subject got because of how those people chose to handle it versus how other groups chose to handle it, and those groups became politically aligned and now treating the reunion tour like a specific thing and giving it the respect and consideration it deserves as a danger is seen as a political action. And thus people are deciding how to react to it and how to behave in regards to the danger it poses based on their political leanings, rather than on the, accuracy of scientific information and all of that other fun stuff.
Yep, well, that's kind of the thing. You mentioned earlier, people like to say, oh, I'm not interested in politics, until they find something they don't want to talk about and they find an excuse to connect it to politics to not talk about it. Everything can be political. Many things are political that people don't necessarily think about, but the term has basically just become a catch-all that people can use however they please to have or not have whatever discussion benefits them at that moment.
It's also that what is political varies from community to community. What is political in many communities is less what is about politics and more what is divisive. What is the community not in agreement on?
And it's amazing how often I don't want to talk about politics usually comes down to I don't want to be called out on for defining what makes a person, because it would make me admit publicly that I don't want to treat people like people.
Yep. Or I don't want to be embarrassed in public for having an opinion that doesn't match the majority. Both if that opinion is wanting to treat a group that the majority disdains with respect, and wanted to treat people badly that the community respects.
Yep, and we see this becoming basically to the forefront very clearly in Half-Blood Prince. Because the Ministry slept so long on the Death Eater issue, they've had a year to get entrenched and run rampant, which is why they're struggling so much. There are many Death Eaters fairly strategically placed throughout the Ministry, which is making it difficult for the Ministry to have a coherent response. When your organization, when your central organization has been overtaken by a terrorist movement, yeah, your response is going to be slowed and stalled, and if you are responsible for the safety of another group that does not have any capacity to defend themselves, yeah, what you call politics is basic survival for those involved. So, we see this playing out, with no real aid offered to the Prime Minister, because as Scrimger puts it, it is protested that, but you guys are wizards, can't you do anything? The trouble is, the other side can do magic too. So, which, kind of, for fellow Americans, underlines the problem of the Second Amendment defense of it just needs a good guy with a gun. The bad guys have them too, and more of them, and less compunction about collateral damage. So, at some point, there's a diminishing return on whether or not there's actually going to be safety from that. Especially because all you need to use a wand in public is your high school diploma. The wizarding world is a mess. Even without Voldemort being there, there are incidents involving muggles and creatures and backfiring spells from students who shouldn't be doing spells in public, but kind of are, because kids are dumb. But now you have a very, very focused hate group terrorist movement on the rise that has infiltrated your power of authority, So the safest place is a magical high school. There's something very off about your world if that's what you have going on. And perhaps the Ministry should do some deep soul searching to figure out why that's the case, or a school where it is entirely possible to be mauled during your classes and to be poisoned during your classes, and where you could be maimed during a detention, is the safest place a wizard could possibly be. The Ministry is not doing its job even when it's finally realized it needs to do its job. And it's not just the wizarding world that pays the price for this widespread negligence.
Which is what happens when you have two societies that exist side by side like this. When you have a society that overlaps its population with another that exists in the same space, you're going to end up with situations where you have people existing in one society, especially when it's one that's hidden within the other. You'll have people in the open society who occasionally bump into parts of the hidden society, and when the parts of the hidden society are dangerous, like Voldemort is, that means you're going to end up in a situation where these people run into a danger that they didn't even know existed, that they couldn't know existed.
Yep. And it's not really that much safer for the wizarding world who knows about the threat. They just get to have the paranoia of knowing it's coming before it happens. Because, well, now that Scrimger is in power and wants to have the Ministry be seen as doing something, he's taken the Barty Crouch route, which is trials without actually being trials, people being arrested, while probably under the influence of the Imperious Curse, to give the appearance of doing something. And this is actually what stops Harry from wanting to help publicly give support to the Ministry. Stan Shunpike, who we met again as the conductor of the night bus, just this dweeby, I think he's in his early 20s, harmless, but got caught attacking Muggles, probably under the influence of the Imperious Curse, has not had a trial, is in Azkaban, and that's who Harry keeps bringing up when asked if he's going to support the Ministry. The Ministry could offer you all sorts of protection, you know, Harry. I would be delighted to place a couple of my Aurors at your service. Voldemort wants to kill me himself, and Aurors won't stop him, so thanks, but no thanks. So, the request I made you at Christmas. What request? Oh yeah, the one where I tell the world what a great job you're doing in exchange for raising everyone's morale. Really Stan Shunpike yet? Scrimger turned a nasty purple color, highly reminiscent of Uncle Vernon. I see you are Dumbledore's man through and through, said Harry. That's right. So, when the agency that exists for your protection is not so much concerned with getting to the root of the problem immediately as it is the appearance of doing so, while the actual problem is something that they know they can't handle, so they're doing little things to try and keep morale up, and you know that anyone could be a target and I was not physically in control of my body or mind at that point in time, is not a defense that anyone will listen to. What faith can you have?
The problem is that these systems...
you have in the system?
Yep, the problem is that these systems don't exist to protect people. They exist to protect the system and the power structures that are built into the system.
But the problem with that is, well, the system is being actively attacked and torn down.
Exactly.
So if the system is failing to not only protect itself, it's failing to protect those who support the system, which means the system itself cannot stand under such a direct assault. So while trying to preserve the power structures and keep things secret, you're all dying because divided we stand. Well, united we stand, divided we fall. And what's more divided than two societies that don't even know each other exists?
Actually, what's more divided than that is two societies where one knows they exist and the other exists, but the other doesn't know and the first won't tell.
Okay, fair. But yeah, there's no hope for unity between the two Britons, the two worlds against Voldemort, because that secrecy is sacrosanct. No one will violate it, even when it could save thousands, if not more, lives. Because the system is more important than the people the system is meant to protect. I'm not sure what else to add on that.
I don't think there's much more to add.
In that case, we shall see you later. Good day.
See you next time.